There is a far kingdom a ways from here, beyond the storm and the sea. There will be no need of darkness and none for tears when that far kingdom I see. There's a river we will know, ever clear and ever full, from the fount that overflows in the light of the King. And when we drink it, we will find that this joy ever full will ever rise, and it'll rise on in the kingdom, in the kingdom. There is a far kingdom on the other side of the glass, and by a faint light we see. Still there is more gladness, longing for the sight than to behold or be filled by anything.
Any of these people get married, they are dead. They are dead. Because they think they have no shame. We have no shame.
We have no shame. We're loud and we are proud.
It's alright that in my sunshine's place it is day.
There's a river we will know, ever clear and ever full, from the fount that overflows in the light of the King. And when we drink it, we will find that this joy of a foe will ever rise, and it'll rise on in the kingdom, in the kingdom. There is a far kingdom on the other side of the glass, and by a faint light we see. Still there is more gladness, longing for the sight than to behold or be filled by anything. There's a river we will know, ever clear and ever full, from the fount that overflows in the light of the King. And when we drink it, we will find that this joy ever full will ever rise, and it'll rise on in the kingdom, in the kingdom. There is a far, far kingdom there at the end of the sea, where they know my name. And until that far, far kingdom calls me home, oh my soul, I will wait for the river we will know, ever clear and ever full, from the fount that overflows in the light of the King. And when we drink it, we will find that this joy of a fool will ever rise, and it'll rise on in the kingdom, in the kingdom, and it'll rise on in the kingdom, in the kingdom.
Wow, oh, wow.
You hear that crunch? You hear it crunch?
That's a good crunch.
Unfortunately, the live stream was interrupted at the beginning of the service, but here are the words that were spoken. Tim loved community, and a few of us had the privilege to spend his last day with him in community. It was a good day, and I'd like to share it with you. It started with coffee, black, of course, ground in a burr grinder, made in a French press. Eggs were for breakfast, accompanied by a side of discussion about atonement theories. Penal substitution? Christus Victor? I think he was a Christus Victor kind of guy. Then it was off to an estate on Niagara Stone Road, where we dropped off a couple of friends for goat yoga. That's right, yoga with goats. The rest of us? Well, we went up the street for some tastings. He didn't like them. Not complex enough, of course. Lunch was back at the house, mostly raiding the fridge and finishing up leftovers. In the afternoon, he drove a few of us to the power plant, a new attraction by the falls. Then he took a nap. It was our last full day, so a fancier dinner was in order. Soy glazed salmon, grilled sausages, green beans, pasta with garlic cream sauce. He ate well. The evening was marked by a glorious victory. 4 rooms and 10 puzzles to solve. He and the team escaped with 9 minutes to spare. A top 25% finish and a trophy to prove it. Midnight came. We were all sitting around the dining room table. He was still hungry. Late night beaver tails? No, too tired.
How about a massive bowl of leftover pasta? Yes, that would be just fine. Oh, the delight on his face. A few hours later, he left us, surrounded by his community, who loved him dearly. My name is Norman Young, and on behalf of Joanne and the entire family, I want to welcome you all into this space today in honor of Reverend Dr. Timothy Tang, or to most of us, just Tim. Tim always found Good Friday to be the most meaningful part of Holy Week. He always wanted us to dwell in the grief and the despair of the day. And that's because he knew that we often tend to gloss over the darkness of Friday and jump to the triumph of Sunday. But as we know painfully well, it is very much still Friday. And you know, that's okay. That's okay. And so today, we will mourn together. We will grieve together. We will embrace each other as our hearts ache over this sudden and tremendous loss. But as distant as it may feel, we will still see glimpses of Sunday today, as we will also witness the extraordinary impact Tim has had on all of us here, on students, staff, and colleagues, on friends and family, and of course, on Joanne, Tobin, Mathis, and Braylon. As we continue our time together, may we be fully present and allow our Creator, Comforter, and Sustainer to fill this place. Amen.
Good morning. My name is Enos, and those of us who are up here have all had the privilege of playing music with Tim, and we know how passionate he was about his music. We know how much it was such a great source of joy for him, and it is our honor to be here this morning, to do what he would be doing here with us, worshiping God. We've all been touched by Tim, and if we don't make it to the end of a song, it's because of how much this meant to us, of how much he meant to us. But we're going to start with a song that It's a Tim special. I don't know anybody else who sings this song in this way. It's called "Oh Love That Will Not Let Me Go." Please rise with me as we sing. Oh love that will not let me go. Oh love that will not let me go. I rest my weary soul in thee. I give thee back the life I owe, that in thine ocean depths its flow be rich and full of me. Be rich and full of me. O light that follows on my way. O light that follows on my way. I yield my flickering torch to thee. My heart restores its borrowed ray, that in thy sunshine's blazing stay a brighter fairer be, a brighter fairer day. O joy that seeketh me, O joy that seeketh me through me. I cannot close my heart to thee. I chase the rainbow through the rain, and feel the promises not made. The dawn shall hear this plea, and morn shall hear this. My chains are gone, my chains are gone. I've been set free. My God, my Savior, has ransomed me. And like our love, His mercy great, unending love, amazing grace. God has prepared for us. When we've been there 10,000 years. Please have a seat.
Hi, my name is Braylon, and I'm Tim's, or as my brothers and I do, Dad's daughter. Many of you knew Tim on the personal side, since he always tried his best to get to know everyone thoroughly and deeply. Some great memories I had with my dad included our COVID board game era. We would always switch up our board games, and no matter what, Mathis would always win, or Tobin would end up on the floor, flustered and broke. My dad was always enthusiastic about playing these games and spending time as a family. The memories mostly included his smelly car for road trips and rides to dance. He always tried to get rid of the smell, even with a tomato basil air freshener and Febreze pods, but no matter what, his car would always stink. He was so particular about his coffee, in which he had to get the best of the best. Sometimes in the mornings, when he brought me earlier to church, he would give me his Starbucks card so I could go there and buy something. I thoroughly enjoyed fancily drinking my chai latte with soy milk or my mango dragon fruit refresher, as I felt like I was mature and sophisticated. But I didn't enjoy waking up early because I was tired and wanted to sleep. Even when he was frustrated at me for leaving my lunch bag in my backpack until the next morning, or leaving my water bottle there too, or leaving a wet towel on my bed. Because at one point he even wanted to get us embroidered towels because we would never put them back in the washroom. He still made lunches for us every single morning. I want to thank my dad for making sure that I was never left out, whether it be with my friends or my family. When I wasn't feeling very well at 2 a.m., he would wake up for me and boil water for my stomach. He was always there for me, especially when I had tests and I had not studied at all. He would either print handouts or find ways to help me in everything that I did. I really miss him.
Hi, my name is Mathis. On September 1st, I left for a volleyball trip to Baltimore. My dad had dropped me off that morning at 5 a.m. I said my goodbye to my dad, thinking I'd see him in just a couple of days. I went into this tournament thinking I was going to barely play, but ended up playing really well, which gave me the starting position. I came back on the long hours back to Markham. My mom picked me up, which was odd because it's usually my dad who gets up at those early hours. I was told about the news and I was quite in shock and already grieving. My dad was always involved through the multiple different sports I played outside of school. I remember those early mornings and long drives where he would need to wake up to drive me to my tournaments. This really showed how much he cared not just about sports, but just anything in general. I remember him asking about how I played and how I thought my team did. My dad was also a big family guy. I remember through COVID, he would always encourage a lot of family time. So we would always do really anything together. One of the things he would always want to do was go on family bike rides. I remember this time when he went on a pretty long bike ride down in the trails near our house. Braylon started to complain about how tired her legs were and how she couldn't go any longer. Tobin and I started to complain about her, about how she was complaining so much. Later on, my dad eventually stepped in. Since my dad is pretty protective, he started defending Braylon because her bike was so small and her legs couldn't keep up with us. Tobin and I still complained, and then my dad later told us to try and switch bikes to see how it would feel with such a small bike. He was always protective of the youngest sibling. We all had similar traits to my dad. My brother spent a lot of time with him, and they had similar emotional temperaments. My sister, he could always relate to because they were both third-borns, and me, who has a lot of connection through our shared passion of playing sports, our easygoing, go-with-the-flow approach to life, and how of reading the room in various situations. So Dad, if you're listening right now, thank you for sticking with me throughout every sport I played and pushing for the family time, which I really wish we could have now. I also have one more last question for you. Who is your favorite child?
This week, I felt overwhelmed with the memories, stories, and thoughts that my father left with me. It's so difficult to encapsulate a lifetime of love in just a few words. Growing up, I witnessed the qualities that made my dad the special man he was, full of generosity, humility, and respect for others. He had this extraordinary gift of being able to listen and care, to prioritize others above himself, even those he had never met before. He invested his precious time to connect with people, to hear their stories. He had this love for stories. He was filled with love and joy, and there was never a moment where he was not smiling. What brings me peace is the knowledge that my father never hid his pride from me. He was so proud, his eldest child, a parenting prototype for my younger brother and sister. He went so far as to always ensure that I was happy and untroubled. He played softball this year, only to play against me. He maintained the pool each year so I could enjoy swimming and teaching lessons. He pushed me to join the rowing team and supported my career and education choices. He dropped everything to drive me around and be with me whenever I felt unwell. He spent countless hours on video games that I played only because I introduced them to him. The list is endless, just like my gratitude for him. Without him, I would be so different. During my childhood, our family of 5 sat down and ate dinner together every night. We'd laugh about our days and share memorable moments. As we grew older, our commitments started to pull us away. We would be absent. Work, soccer, volleyball, dance. Our daily family dinners slowly became less and less until it was a rare occurrence. When we did, however, have our dinners, it was special. It made me so happy seeing him so excited just to eat dinner with his own family. It's something that I took for granted, but now it is one of the things I will miss the most. Whenever I sit down to eat, I'm reminded of what my dad treasured, those rare family dinners. As I've reflected, I've been saddened by the realization that I once assumed my father would be with me forever. I lost the future I'd envisioned myself sharing with him. It pains me that he won't be there to watch my graduation or attend my wedding. He won't be around to see me purchase my first home or establish a career. I'll forever be upset that my children will never know how great of a man he truly was. All I can do is share stories and photos of him. However, everything I remember and everything I've learned from him will guide me in the future. It was only this past week that I truly comprehended the profound impact of my father. Listening to his friends, reading the messages on the boards, revisiting old photos and videos, helped me become aware of the countless lives he had touched. He lived a life of immense fulfillment. I will forever be proud to call him my father and cherish the memories of a perfect dad. I strive to be like him. He is my hero. My love for him is endless, and I can't wait to see him again. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dorothy, and I work with Tim at the Tyndale Intercultural Ministry Center. I met Tim almost 30 years ago. Along with one other person, Tim and I had volunteered to be cooks for a youth group camping trip. It was only after I volunteered that I realized that the three of us were being asked to cook for 70 teenagers, that's 70, who all expected 3 square meals a day for 5 days. Now, for those of you who are doing the mental math, that would be over 1,000 meals that the three of us had to cook, under the open air and in a campsite. None of us had any food safety training. And if you know Tim Tang, you know where this story is going. Tim came up with the brilliant idea, and I do put 100% of the responsibility on Tim. Tim's brilliant idea was that we should pre-cook all the chicken before we went up to the campsite. So I arrive at his house, and there, all along the tiled hallway, were hundreds of chicken breasts, all defrosting at various stages. And you know how meat gets when it starts to pool in its own gummy juice? Yeah, that's what I walked into. So we took everything to the kitchen and we started to cook, and that's when Tim came up with his second brilliant idea. He said, hey, let's not cook it through. Let's keep it half raw. So when we get to the campsite, it'll taste fresh when we serve it. Did I mention that none of us had any food safety training? Tim and I were a walking liability back then. Tim and I would often joke that if we could work together like that under those conditions without having a single fight, then we could probably survive doing ministry together. And so it was. 27 years later, God reunited us again, but this time under the Tyndale Intercultural Ministry Center. At the beginning of 2022, Dr. Robert Cousins had retired, and the full mantle of leadership for the Tim Center was now on Tim. He invited me to join his team as his right hand, and together with our talented team, there was this sense that this was a new era, that building on the foundation that Dr. Cousins had laid, we would turn the page to a new chapter. Tim and I fit together like two puzzle pieces. He was unscripted, and I was scripted. He was academic and had high-level thinking. I was practical and had my ear to the ground. He was fluid, and I was structured. On more than one occasion, with not a small amount of frustration in my voice, I would say to him, Tim, it's so hard to get you to commit to a plan. It's like nailing Jell-O to the wall. And he would laugh, and he would make his funny face, and then we would be good. Because you see, with Tim, there was always laughter. There was always room for another conversation. There was always room for another perspective. But for the Tyndale leadership in the room today, You will be happy to know that Tim matured from those early days. He is no longer a walking liability. In fact, Tim had matured into a humble, mindful, and generous leader. For those of us on the Tim Center team, we knew that Tim had a deep affection for each of us. We knew he was for us. He was the type of leader who showed up ready to serve his team instead of expecting his team to show up to serve him. He was always looking for opportunities to develop us, and it made him genuinely happy to see us grow. One of the most remarkable things about Tim was his ability to hold space. It's not enough to say that he was a good listener. That doesn't capture it. He had a way of listening that made you feel understood and validated. He wasn't rushed. There was a gentle invitation to enter a different kind of conversation with him. He built trust by holding our stories and acknowledging our experiences. Tim was a trailblazer. Long before the words intercultural, diversity, inclusion were part of the mainstream vocabulary, he was already studying, writing, and teaching about it. He was convinced that the church should be at the forefront of this discussion. He worked tirelessly to open up the conversations with churches and mission agencies, and he trained leaders on intercultural competency and intercultural fluency. And in doing this, he was a bit of a maverick, wasn't he? He was unafraid to stand in the gap between cultures. He was unafraid to stand in the gap between generations. Tim raised the voices of those who were often overlooked, voices from the diaspora, new immigrant pastors, women leaders, young leaders. Tim had a huge network and a huge platform, but what made him stand out was that he not only shared his platform, but oftentimes he gave it away. Even as I bring my comments to a close now, I can hear Tim's voice in my head. Stop focusing on me. It's not about me. Tim's work doesn't stop here. It can't end with him. He planted seeds in each of us, and although he is gone, the intercultural work that he started will continue to bear fruit in each of us. Tim used to start each speaking engagement with the same joke. He would say, "Hi, I'm Timothy Tang from the Tyndale Intercultural Ministry Center, Tim Center for short. And no, the center is not named after me." Well, my friend, for the next little while, whenever I hear the words Tim Center, I'll be thinking of you. And in my head, I will say, yeah, it really was named after you. I am bewildered that you are gone so soon. But I will see you again. And when I do, there will be laughter, and there will be shared stories, and there will be more of your funny facial expressions.
Let's rise as we sing of the goodness of God.
your struggles keep you near the cross. May your troubles show that you need God. May your battles end the way they should. May your bad days prove that God is good. May your whole life prove that God is good.
May your struggles keep you near the cross.
May your struggles keep you near the cross. May your troubles show you need God. May your battles end the way they should. May your bad days prove that God is good. May your whole life prove that God is
We love you, Lord. We love you, Lord. Oh, your mercy never fails us. All our days, we've been held in your hands.
from the moment that we wake up till we lay our heads. We will sing of the goodness of God.
We love your voice.
You have led us to the fire, darkest times. You are close like no other. We've known you as a father, known you as a friend. We have lived in the goodness of God.
All our lives. All our lives you have been faithful.
All our lives you have been faithful. All our lives you have been so good. Every breath that we are able, we will sing of the goodness of God. We will sing of the goodness of God. We will sing
May your struggles keep you near the cross. May your struggles keep you
near the cross. May your troubles show that you
May your battles end the way they
need God.
should.
May your battles end the
prove that God is good.
May your bad days prove that God is good. May your whole life prove that
May our bad days.
God is good. May our bad days prove that God
May our whole lives.
is good. May our whole lives prove that God is good.
Please have a seat.
Let's pray together. Dear God, our Father in heaven, we come before you today. Holy Spirit, teach us how to pray. We come to you in Jesus' name. When we do not know what words to use to express our sorrow, please hear our groans. When we do not understand, help us to still trust in you. When all we feel is pain, shock, and confusion, this we call to mind. Therefore we have hope. The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. Your mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. God, you are our portion. So at this time we wait for you. We hold on to the truth and your promise that nothing can ever separate us from the love of Christ, not even death. Death is defeated through Christ's cross and resurrection. But in this very difficult time, we are still here, and we wait. We pray for our dear sister Joanne, and Tobin, Mathis, and Braylon, and all of Tim's family. Please give them your comfort that only you can give. Hide them under the shadow of your wings. Thank you so much for blessing us with our dear brother. His life was lived for your glory. He has been such a great encouragement, a great friend, a faithful brother in Christ, a person who truly loved and cared for many, like an older brother to many of us, a mentor, a teacher, a wise leader, a godly model, a pastor and shepherd, and a great husband and father. He's pointed us to Christ. He's lifted up so many when we were down. He truly reflected the love of Christ and a servant heart. It's a great loss for us, but it gives us comfort he is now at home with you. In these coming days and weeks and months, we pray, may your Spirit's presence dwell strongly with Joanne and Tobin, Mathis, Braylon, for all his family and all of us, his spiritual family and friends. May your name be glorified. And this we pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
我哋一齊同心祈禱。創造萬物嘅主，我哋今日嚟到你嘅面前，心中充滿懷念。我哋懷念着我哋嘅鄧日輝牧師弟兄、父親、兄弟。你知道 Tim's 屋企人，特別係 Joanne， 佢哋嘅兒女、父母親、家人。喺呢段時間係幾需要主你自己嘅安慰，求你就將佢哋同埋我哋一齊緊抱喺你個心裏面懷中，讓我哋一齊可以投靠你，使我哋可以經歷主你所賜嘅平安。賜生命嘅主天父上帝，我哋知道生命從你創造，我哋要信服你嘅旨意，我哋唔願意見到我哋嘅親愛嘅弟兄離開，但我哋深信主你與我哋同在。 弟兄喺我哋生命當中從小得着你自己嘅愛護，得着家人、父母、兄長嘅照顧，讓佢得着主你無盡嘅愛，更加你將呢啲愛從弟兄身上去感染身邊嘅人，無論係成為一個幾出色嘅講員、幾出色嘅牧者，佢就藉着佢自己嘅生命，影響着無數嘅年輕人、無數嘅第二代、第三代喺加拿大出生、成長，用佢嘅生命去影響着佢哋。求主你就親自安慰每一個曾經受着弟兄嘅教導、幫助、激勵嘅，都得着安慰。求你使我哋唔會忘記弟兄喺家人當中嘅親情。我哋喺主你自己嘅愛顧當中，我哋知道我哋喺天家會再相會。但願尊貴榮耀歸於我哋主耶穌基督，能賜各樣安慰嘅上帝，聽我哋嘅禱告，靠賴我哋愛我哋嘅耶穌基督聖名而求，阿門。
The word of the Lord comes to us from 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 4 to 5. As you come to him, the living stone, rejected by humans, but chosen by God and precious to him, you also, like living stone, are being built into a spiritual house to be a holy priesthood, offering your spiritual sacrifice acceptable to God through Jesus Christ our Lord.
彼得前書1章2至4節，2章4至5節係咁樣講：主乃活石，固然是被人所棄的，卻是被神所揀選、所寶貴的。你們來到主面前，也就像活石，被建造成靈宮，做聖潔嘅祭司，藉着耶穌基督奉獻神所悅納嘅靈祭。願上帝嘅話語常存喺我哋心裏面。
Good morning, everyone. My name is Julie Vane, and this is Mika Kawasaki. We are a part of the ETCBC preaching team. Many of you know Tim as this well-known speaker, big-name consultant, director of the Tim Center. But I knew him as Tim, my pastor and my friend. Over the years, Tim and Joe really took me under their wing and flooded my life with love and food. Their couch probably still has my teenager tears and snack crumbs from all the time we spent together. As we got older and our lives got busier with work and kids, Tim still made an intentional effort to connect. Quick chats and text messages to find out how I was doing, what I was up to, where God was leading me next. And whatever that was, he would be cheering me on. He believed I can do anything. He saw something special in me, despite having seen my good, bad, and ugly sides. As I look into this sea of puffy-eyed individuals here with us, I know he wasn't just investing in me, but this entire community. He believed in us. He loved this community, and he showed it day in and day out with every ounce of his being. So when news got out about Tim's passing, something inside me broke. That paralyzing and sinking feeling that pulled me onto the floor that day. I remember screaming, "Why?" so hard and desperately that it came out silent, because I couldn't breathe. Why? Why Tim? I'm still struggling to digest this reality. I am still broken and unable to pick up the pieces, and perhaps you all understand as well. As I stand here, I can recite to myself those Christian cliches that we use to reassure each other that God's will is greater than our understanding. And yet they still kind of fall on my deaf ears. But here I am, speaking, preaching to all of you. Who am I to address this room? And while it's so natural to feel unworthy of this calling, especially in my current state of mind, Tim made it his life mission for people broken and flawed like me to see and believe that we are, and I am, a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, and God's special possession. It is why Tim created a preaching team. It is unconventional, but diversity in the voices that are elevated matters. But the work of forming this team didn't start when he asked us to speak on a Sunday. It started long before, when we were just hanging out, checking in, and showing up. Now, his influence on this entire community has helped us, the preaching team, see what God sees in us, a priesthood of believers. Now, does that mean we all become preachers? Maybe not, but each one of us is invaluable and we're indispensable in the kingdom of God. We all have a part to play, and Jesus, who sees us and knows us, will meet us where we are. For today, the preaching team chose to speak on 1 Peter, not only because we felt it captured so much of life's work and legacy, but this letter was written during a time when persecution was happening to the righteous. It focuses on the importance of believers persevering through unjust suffering and exhorts us to emulate the suffering Christ in our distress.
In the Old Testament, a priest was a man divinely appointed to carry out sacred actions, such as offering sacrifices at the altar, to act as an intermediary between men and God, and communicate God's grace to others. The collective priesthood was regarded as the authority of religious knowledge and was reserved for men of a special tribe called the Levites. But here in the passage where it says, "You also, like living stones, are being built into a spiritual house to be a holy priesthood," Peter throws wide open this privilege and responsibility to everyone and invites us, even in our suffering, to all be a part of the holy priesthood. This is the same Peter who received instruction from God through a vision to rise above all his cultural religious conventions and just to welcome, eat, and spend time with Gentiles. This is the same Peter who, on the day of Pentecost, raised his voice and quoted the prophet Joel, envisioning the Spirit of God being poured out on women, men, young, and old, on everyone in the last days. And it was Tim who walked alongside us, who welcomed us, who ate with us, and spent time mentoring and investing in us. And it was Tim who envisioned a different model of preaching, a team that includes many voices, women, men, young, old, lay people, and seminarians within our church. And so today, as a diverse crowd of over 800 people, as we sit with our grief, our disbelief, our sadness, our pain, our anger, perhaps Peter is saying that there's no time to waste on old cultural customs and conventions that separate us from what God calls us to be. That each one of us, just as we are, broken and flawed, are called to be a necessary part of the holy priesthood, an essential stone, and a precious piece of the spiritual house of God. When we come and dwell in the spiritual house together, we know that it will not be easy. In fact, a lot of the time it's super hard. As someone who considers Joanne, Braylon, Mathis, and Tobin to be family, I'm stuck in a place of anger. But still I come with belief that God is present and working within this community that loves Tim so dearly. Just as stones are placed next to each other when building a house, I believe in God's design for this spiritual house, where we come alongside one another in our grief and hold each other up, where we come alongside one another and hold each other and lift each other, especially when we don't fully understand God's plan. We can be devastated and have hope at the same time. We can grieve losing Tim so soon while celebrating the outpourings of his life. We can walk through the valley of the shadow of death and be the light that shines for others on their path. The spiritual community accepts us fully and supports us to become vessels through which God's love and grace flow outward to those in need around us. I so wish that Tim was here in person to see this crowd. Not because he would feel so special being the center of attention, but because he would be excited with the opportunity to engage all your voices in breaking down cultural and societal barriers, to embrace inclusion and diversity, to empower each of you within your grief, to let you know that you are needed, to support and walk alongside others, just as he did. Tim, I know you're smiling from up above, and I hope I channeled God's message the way that you had envisioned it. Dear friends, as we reflect on these words from 1 Peter, and as we remember all that Tim was and is to our community, may we choose to come. May we choose hope. May we choose purpose. And may we choose to have a renewed faith in the midst of our grief. We are not alone in our suffering. We have a living stone, Jesus Christ, who understands our pain and walks with us through it. We are not broken by our grief. We are being built up as living stones in God's spiritual house, part of a holy priesthood, with a mission to bring hope and healing to a world in need. May God's strength, unfailing love, and constant presence sustain us as we journey forward together.
弟兄姊妹，請容許我用廣東話好簡單咁樣去同大家分享返我哋兩位姊妹 之前嘅分享。喺東浸裏面，我哋好相信知道阿 Tim 好怕冗長嘅聚會，佢成日都希望我哋嘅活動可以好快咁樣完結，因為佢好想去享受我哋嘅食物。Tim 係一個好出名嘅講員，好受人愛戴。佢係一個好好嘅顧問，因為我哋有咩問題都可以返到佢身邊，喺佢面前去問佢。佢係一個好好嘅帶領者，幫助我哋去認識，去知道我哋每一個人從神而嚟嘅恩典，同埋好多好多嘅禮物，從神嚟嘅禮物。Julie 同我哋講到 Tim 係用好多嘅機會，去把握好多嘅機會，去同身邊每一個人去接觸。特別喺我哋最低潮嘅時候，佢會用盡佢嘅方法去鼓勵、去激勵每一個。無論我哋喺開心逆境嘅時候，或者逆境嘅時候，佢都會喺我哋身邊。我哋相信在座每一個，好似我哋一班教牧同工領袖一樣，聽到 Tim 嘅離開，我哋每一個人生命當中都缺少咗一個部分。有時我哋都會覺得我哋不配，但係 Tim 就係俾我哋一個提醒，讓我哋知道喺神裏面，我哋有一個特別嘅呼召。雖然我哋係缺陷嘅，有缺乏失嘅，但我哋要深相信，我哋係被揀選嘅，我哋係一個聖潔嘅祭司，喺神嘅角度裏面有一個好重要嘅身份。我哋每一個都係有呢個位份。我哋教會嘅講道團隊今日揀選咗彼得前書去同大家分享。喺段經文裏面，我哋知道我哋就係嗰個活石，我哋就係嗰位被建造成為靈宮嘅，我哋就係嗰個聖潔嘅祭司，我哋要成為耶穌基督所悅納嘅祭。彼得係提醒我哋每一個人都有我哋嘅權責。當我哋喺憂傷困苦嘅當中，我哋就要彼此去激勵，彼此去建造。神俾咗 Tim 有一個好特別嘅異象，就係讓到唔同嘅有恩賜嘅弟兄姊妹，無論年輕嘅、年長嘅，我哋嘅平信徒領袖，或者曾經喺天道神學院或者其他神學院畢業讀過神學嘅，都有一個位份喺當中，去分享神，我哋領受當神嘅話語，去激勵大家。我哋每一個都覺得不配喺呢個面前同大家分享，但係 Tim 覺得我哋能夠嘅，神亦都係咁樣同我哋講。或者我哋每一個人都覺得 亦都係會有好悲憤嘅時候。點解喺呢個時候將Tim拎走喺我哋生命當中？但係Tim會話俾我哋聽，我哋每一個都係喺呢個群體當中，睇得到神與我哋同在，喺我哋生命當中工作。我哋深相信神有佢嘅計劃，喺我哋生命每一個當中，我哋彼此鼓勵，彼此同行，喺呢個聖潔嘅靈宮裏面去建立大家。我哋或者未明白神嘅旨意，但我哋深相信，我哋有着盼望。當我哋悲傷憂痛嘅時候，主你自己就親自去俾我哋有安慰。當我哋行過死蔭幽谷當中嘅時候，你就俾我哋見到前面嘅光芒。弟兄姊妹朋友、家人、Tim嘅父母、Joanne 佢哋嘅仔女，讓我哋一齊去記住，我哋嘅身邊有着一班弟兄姊妹、朋友，我哋一齊去建立呢個社群體。我哋有着盼望，我哋係被揀選嘅。我哋喺悲傷當中去更新我哋嘅盼望，我哋嘅對神嘅信心。我哋唔係孤單咁樣去走前邊嘅路，我哋會一齊去同行。神俾我哋有好大嘅福分，更加俾咗耶穌基督喺我哋生命當中，佢明白我哋嘅痛苦，每一天都跟着我哋一齊行。願上帝賜我哋力量，不滅嘅愛，永遠嘅同在，帶領我哋去走前邊嘅路，一同行，迎向天家。Amen。
My dearest, dearest Tim, I still can't believe how much has changed in the recent week and a half. Though time has been trekking along as usual for most people, it has felt like the longest 11 days of my life. Tim, I'll never forget those initial moments of panic that early Monday morning while on vacation. Our closest friends found themselves suddenly having to jump in to assist you, each with their own role and expertise, when your heart unexpectedly gave out and stopped. I mean, one friend even had an AED she'd been keeping in her car for the last couple of years for anyone who found themselves in an emergency situation. After the paramedics arrived, they continued with what our friends had already started and relentlessly worked on you all the way until we arrived at the hospital. The doctor explained to me that they were doing all they could because you were still so young. But the rush of what rapidly transpired that brief morning hour came to a complete halt when the medical professionals knew there was nothing more they could do, expressed their condolences to me, and left the room so I could say my final goodbyes to you alone. As I sat beside you in utter disbelief and desperation, endlessly caressing your cheeks, chest, and arms, kissing you all over your face for both me and the kids, suddenly finding myself even trying to keep your hands and toes warm, I remember crying out the same question over and over again in complete despair. How is this even possible? How is this even possible? And though that question was very much my visceral response that morning, it is a question that has continued to replay in my heart and mind this past week as I've been reflecting on all that you have been, all that you have done, and all that you have meant to me. Tim, how is it even possible that the person whom I've loved and shared every life stage with since high school be gone? I mean, to be honest, how is it even possible that you even somehow stole my heart in the first place when you had known all along that I've always been drawn to tall, lean, chiseled, and cerebrally inclined, socially awkward guys? When I reflect on all that we've shared together, there really are way too many memories. Like, how is it even possible that you and I have celebrated our very own pizza day with endless amounts of pizza every March 6th since high school? That day when we first expressed our like for each other after a youth group pizza day event. It was such a simple and innocent adolescent moment on the phone that night, but somehow, even as a teen, you recognized its significance and fanned its flame over the years. I mean, Tim, that's what you've done for so many things in our relationship and marriage. You always took small moments and grew them so that our relationship felt big and important, and you always made me feel special and absolutely cherished by you. You frequently described love as a choice, that love isn't just a feeling that people fall into, but instead that true love is a daily decision to commit. Throughout our 30 years together, you chose to love me daily by turning on the lights whenever I was so entrenched in a task I didn't even notice it was dark, giving me the first bite or sip of anything we shared, selflessly giving me hand and head massages when I was stressed and couldn't fall asleep. I'm telling you all, this Tim Tang guy really was the real deal. You always wanted to be physically close to me, but knew I tended to overheat in bed, so as long as your toe or finger was physically on me, you felt connected. Every morning when you made coffee and we would share a deep, long bear hug to start the day, I always felt so comforted in your arms. You always showed up for every marathon I ran, took care of everything at home when I trained, and where possible, always made sure the kids would be at the finishing line to cheer me along with you. Tim, you regularly pivoted from your own plans to, as you would say, free me to do what I needed or wanted to do. On top of that, you always intentionally lavished me with gifts and memorable, grand gestures of experiential moments. Tim, I will never forget the ways we would talk and talk and talk as we shared about our lives, kids, work, and ministry. You were the person I processed everything with. We were the bestest of friends. It still amuses me now how we only recently reflected on the fact that we've been doing very similar work in the areas of equity, cultural competency, and social justice. Though we carried our work out in very different spaces and organizations, it was always the same conviction, spirit, and approach, because it's the way we've been breathing and shaping each other all these years. Now, different from you, though, Tim, I didn't have an entire center named after me before I even knew the center existed. I mean, that in itself is yet another one of those how is this even possible moments. Like, hi, I'm Tim. I'm from the Tim Center. For a person who has never been about themselves, though you were initially embarrassed about the coincidence of the Tim Center's name to yours, in true Timothy Tang style, you soon learn to laugh about it and then work with it. Tim, you always accepted both me and your circumstances, quirks, eccentricities, and all with grace and gratitude. Now, Tim, how is it even possible that you gave so much of yourself to me, but also did the same for our 3 children? You always wanted to spend time with them and was willing to put anything on hold to support them. Sharing meals around the kitchen table was the highlight of your day. You were always proud of our kids and beamed when they did the simplest things. Like, when they were young, you ecstatically cheered when they dropped their first poops in the toilet. When they were older, you were always the loudest and most animated dad at soccer, volleyball, and softball games. And though you knew very little about dance, you were always present, ready to assist with curling hair or removing hair extensions after competitions. Tim, your over-the-top boisterousness was at times a bit embarrassing, but your excitement was contagious and comforting because it was clear to us that not only did you repeatedly choose to be present, but you always took that extra step to fully engage, fully encourage, and fully embrace whatever our children's interests and joys were. You always wanted to create experiences for them because you believe that experiences are what people remember. Every time you went away on a work trip, you always made the effort to bring a different child on the trip with you so you could invest in them as individuals while also experiencing a new adventure together. And though at other times you planned countless trips and day trips for our family, the most memorable moments were often the seemingly insignificant occasions when our family would spontaneously pile ourselves on top of each other from largest to smallest to take a family selfie. Or how about those times when we, at an impromptu, broke into song in the car as a family, with each one of us taking a different harmony or descant, but only to be told by one of our kids who initiated the singing, that was meant to be a solo. The endless belly-aching laughter we share together as a family will never be the same without you. Tim, on top of constantly pouring your love generously onto me and the kids, you also deeply cared for your parents, brothers, nephews, and nieces. You loved your mom dearly and was faithfully by her side during her most difficult times. In fact, I've always attributed your strength, resilience, and responsive service to others to who she is and the connection that you had with her. Tim, I'll also never forget the times you preached. In fact, our church will never forget. Those times you preached about your dad's immigration story and couldn't keep it together because you were so moved by his story. I'll never forget the many times you shared with me how much you just wanted to be like your brothers and how you've been genuinely enthusiastic about the aspirations of your nieces and nephews. Tim, how is it even possible, with so much love for me, your children, and your family, did you still have room for so many other loves? Now, to be honest though, some of these loves often spilled into pure snobbery and obsession as you endlessly researched and explored these passions of yours. Like, though you could eat pedestrian quality dumplings and rice every day of your life, you were also constantly keeping a running list of frou-frou restaurants you wanted to try but could not really ever afford. The kids and I have already been discussing just what are we going to do with your countless coffee-making apparatuses you used to brew the custom roasted beans you regularly purelated to our house? What are we going to do with the endless bottles of high-end single malt whiskey and scotch you've been collecting that you genuinely savored? I hope it's okay that I'm saying this at Tyndale University. I apologize, but it is what it is. That you used to treat yourself after an arduous or fulfilling day at work. What are we going to do with the fact that you seem to have a wire for everything, bike accessories for every possible situation, and oh my goodness, your obsession with music gear, you audio snob. Which, by the way, I have to mention, the sound in here is incredible. Even when we go through drive-thrus at McDonald's, if it is a good sound system, Tim will comment on it to the person on the other side. Your endless pedals, speakers, instruments, and recording and mixing devices. Your long-term habit of ordering things online and having them shipped to the church so I wouldn't know about them. All kind of caught up to you that time I received a phone call looking for a Mr. Timothy Tang because they needed confirmation on what custom finish you wanted on your custom crafted bass. I do have to say though, for a person who knew so much about so many different things, it always surprised me just how unhandy you were around the house. Like that time I praised you for changing a light bulb in our bedroom, only to realize a couple days later, when I went to turn on the lights in the dining room, that your idea of changing a light bulb meant merely taking it from another room. Tim, how is it even possible that you have all these interests and loves and still have time and a passion for producing music? The number of hours you spent mixing down layers upon layers of music since we were teenagers, all the way up until just 2 weeks ago. In fact, I'll never forget when we would record music together with your Tascam 424 analog soundboard in a friend's basement, while we used your mom's pantyhose wrapped around bent wires to use as windscreens. How did you know so much about recording at such a young age? And how did you endlessly fan-guy listen to and learn from your favorite bassists like Jaco Pastorius, Marcus Miller, and Victor Wooten? And sorry about that bass clip that was in the video earlier, Tim. We know you can play better than that. I think you were just playing around, so I'm sure you were reeling with that vid. Well, cheers to those heroes of yours, because your playing has only become that much rich and nuanced and rhythmically complex and fluid over the years. And as I had always told you, though I am the one who holds the official accreditation in music, you were the true musician in the house. Tim, we will miss and love your big gospel sounds like just through the voice that we heard you belt out in church. Even though we learned you actually have no idea what words you're actually singing, because it's in the beats and rhythms that you feel, hear, and truly experience the presence of God. Tim, how is it even possible that you have this inability to remember people's names, which, by the way, is an awful quality to have when you're a pastor? Yet you have this gift of making each and every person you meet feel as though they were seen and heard and accepted as is. You never took yourself too seriously, was witty and funny as heck, but most importantly, you were responsive to where people were at, what they needed, and created space for them to show up as their true selves. You always elevated people's strengths and then, where possible, connected them with others who you too were building relationships with all along. Your ability to see the bigger picture always astounded me as you lived beyond the binaries of black and white and instead acknowledged, sat in, and was willing to navigate the uncomfortable, challenging, and messy grays of the in-between. Though your best sermons were always dreamed up and written on restaurant napkins with that awful, all caps chicken scratch of yours that you could even barely read yourself, you led and taught with confidence, conviction, a posture of openness, and humility. You challenged people and institutions with their thinking, incepted ideas and concepts that you lived by, and reframed unexamined practices and traditions so that needed change would be palatable and more accepted. You always elevated the individual gifts and sociocultural capacities of racialized women and marginalized communities, and you constantly leveraged the tables and spaces you had access to see those goals through. You did this not simply through words, but instead paired it with authentic, honest, tangible, and embedded action. So, Tim, as I look out at this glorious chapel that you've spent so much time in playing bass, preaching, listening, and sharing space with others, when I look and see how packed it is with others, which I hear also there's 5 overflow rooms. Hi, everybody. Of those you too have invested in, whose hearts you too have touched either directly or indirectly through your family or ministry, it is because of that steadfast investment and impact and that relentless, selfless showing up as yourself and that sacrificial giving of yourself that has compelled us all to gather today to reflect on and celebrate your life. You always recognize the incredible work God was already fulfilling through his creation, and you simply tapped into that vision and continued building, contributing to, and making what would otherwise seem impossible, possible. Mr. Timothy Tang, you have lived a full, rich, and impactful life. You are too big and too vast, and we cannot contain you. A part of you is in each one of us, and we are inspired to continue living in the way that you both lived and worked. You have been everything, everywhere, and all at once for us. And for that, we are grateful. Our dearest, dearest Timothy Tang, we love you and miss you and can't wait to see you again.
Just a few weeks ago, Tim led the song, "Yet not I, but through Christ in me," and I think it sums up his attitude towards his life, how he saw himself, how he saw God. Rise with me as we sing. Gift of grace. One gift of grace is Jesus, my Redeemer. There is no more for heaven now to give. He is my joy, my righteousness and freedom, my steadfast love, my deep and boundless peace. To this I hold, my hope is only Jesus. For my life is wholly bound to His. Please have a seat.
As we come to the end, may we rise as you are able for our benediction. Let us rise together. May the peace of God be with you. May you know the warmth of his love. May you hear the whispers of his voice. And may you feel the power of his Spirit. And may you go forth with the assurance of the resurrection this day and forevermore. Amen. You may be seated.
When I look out onto this sea of people here in the overflow rooms and online around the world, it is abundantly clear the impact Tim has made and just how loved he was by all of you. And so on behalf of Joanne and the entire family, I want to thank you all for joining us on this journey today and expressing that love so resoundingly. I know Tim would have been beside himself with embarrassment by how many people have been involved in making this day happen. But I also know how humbled and grateful he would be. There are too many to thank everyone by name. But I did want to acknowledge the tremendous generosity of Tyndale University for providing us this incredible space, as well as so many staff and volunteers. Bayview Glen Church for providing much needed overflow parking. Highland Funeral Homes for their services. And finally, the many, many people from Tim's workplace, the Tyndale Intercultural Ministry Center, and Tim's faith community, East Toronto Community Baptist Church, for having put in countless hours in making sure that no detail was overlooked. If you haven't already, we also invite you to continue the journey we've started here today by sharing your story of Tim on the online Kudo board. At some point in the next few weeks, we will be compiling all of these stories into a book for Joanne and the kids so they have a tangible reminder of all that Tim has done. At this time, I invite Highland Funeral Home to come forward as we prepare for the recessional.
Ladies and gentlemen, in a few moments, we will be calling the immediate family forward to pay their final respects. We will then close the casket and call the pallbearers forward. Later on today, there will be a private cremation.
各位親友、主內弟兄姊妹午安。喺我哋結束我哋嘅安息禮拜之前，我哋會請鄧立輝牧師博士嘅家人作最後嘅告別禮。我亦都請各位親友請你喺個座位安坐，跟住我哋一息間我哋會離開呢個禮堂。咁鄧牧師嘅遺體會喺家人同埋親友陪同之下，喺下晝會做一個私人嘅火化禮。最後，本人謹代表我哋殯儀館祝大家身體安康，出入嘅平安，主恩常在。